Boa tarde, boa
Okay,
noite a todos.
thank you very much, Chris,
É um prazer para mim falar
to
de
all of you.
Nemias Moll.
It's a great pleasure to talk about
Ele é
Nemias Moll.
jovem adulto.
He's a young,
Estou lendo o livro quando
he
tinha
started
ainda
reading the
25
book
anos
when
e
he
hoje
was
ele tem
20,
45.
25
Ele
years
tem
old. Now
6
he's 40.
filhos. É um
He has
leitor
6
muito
children.
assíduo, muito
He
atuante na comunidade
he
de
reads
Urantia
constantly
no
the book
Brasil.
and very
Ele
active in
foi
the community in Brazil.
vice-presidente da Associação
He
Urantia do Brasil
was vice
durante
president
os anos de
of the Urantia
2008
Association of
até
Brazil
2012.
from 2008 to 2012.
Perdão, durante esse período ele foi o presidente.
I'm
E
sorry,
durante
during
esses
this
2
period,
anos,
he
de
was
2004 a
president.
2008, ele
He was
também
president from
foi o
2008 to
criador e é o
2012.
mantenedor do
He
grupo
was,
Educo, que é
he's
estudante do
also
livro
founder and
Direito no
keeper
Brasil.
of the
Então,
ELUB
hoje ele
group,
é também
Students of the Urantia
diretor
Book
da
in
Escola
Brazil.
Urantia no Brasil
Currently,
e é
he's the
do
director or
Conselho
principal of
Representativo
the
da
Urantia
Urantia
School in Brazil.
Associação do Brasil. É dos
He's a
mais
representative.
relevantes estudantes do livro de Urantia
He's
na
one of the most
literatura
important
brasileira.
students of the
Muito obrigado,
Urantia book
Nemias,
in
por
Brazil.
estar aqui conosco.
Thank you very much, Nemias, to be with us.
Obrigado, Henrique.
Thank you very much, Henrique.
Todos estão me ouvindo?
Eu estou ouvindo sim, Nemias.
Ok, muito obrigado. Bom, pessoal, boa tarde a todos. Aqui no Brasil são 17 horas.
Good afternoon to everyone. In Brazil, it's 5 p.m. Maybe for you guys, it's good evening.
Quero dizer que é uma honra participar desse evento.
I want to say it's an honor to participate in this event.
Imensamente. Fico muito grato pelo convite.
I am immensely grateful to participate. I'm going to talk a little bit about a phase of Jesus' life.
Vou compartilhar minha tela com vocês. Bom, meu objetivo.
My objective, moment that we're celebrating the birthday of Jesus when he was born in this planet, in this world. We know that he was not born in December 25th. The date is October 21st. My objective is not only to tell events of Jesus' life, but to find in his life, in his experiences, in his decisions, in his attitudes, some example of lesson, something we can learn from his experiences, so we can get inspired by his experiences. So we know that the life in the Urantia planet is not an easy life. We have our daily struggles. We have our daily struggles. And many times when we think that everything is going well, another battle presents itself. And we need to face these difficulties. How can we face these difficulties? Jesus' life is a very rich example on how to deal with this, because Jesus' life was very complicated. He had always to face a different problem. And from each problem he faced, we can learn a lesson. His life was really not easy. There wasn't any youngster that faced the challenges that Jesus' life, and nor will ever be. To start, he was born in a stable. there was no house for them in Nazareth. So his first crib was a manger where animals used to eat. While he was a baby, he was pursued, chased by Herod. So they needed to run away from Egypt. So he needed to live in friend's home. So the beginning of his life was already difficult. When his family went back to Nazareth, he went to live in a very humble life. The Urantia book says that there was just one room. Then Joseph made that house bigger. At 6 years of age, Jesus already worked, taking care of grapes and flowers. And I would like to highlight, in each one of these topics, I'm trying to find something that is an example of value that we can use, that we can get inspired by Jesus' life. And in this topic, he started his life. I highlight the pleasure for working. Since he was very young, he had pleasure for working. He liked, he was very, he was a perfectionist at his work. At 6, so young, he had knowledge in Aramaic and started his studies of Greek. And Jesus had a taste for studies. He was always studying something. He spent hours studying a flower, the vegetables. He was interested in everything he saw. He always appreciated the contact to students and the truth seekers. Although he was a child and he had his group of friends, he tried to have contact to elderly people, more mature people. He was very advanced for his age. He was interested in subjects that other kids didn't have interest. So we can see his social skills and sense of socialization since very, very young. He grew interest for his people's history and the meaning of religious celebrations. He wanted to know the meaning of the celebrations. The Jew people had many celebrations like Easter and many others. And he wanted to know the origin and why. So he had a lot of thirst for knowledge. It's another aspect we can learn from him. Jesus used to talk to his Father in heaven in an informal way, something that was not common among the Jews. Actually, it was not advisable. No one should talk directly to God. He didn't have this formality. So since very young, he used to talk to his heavenly Father like he was talking to his earthly father. So we can see his intimacy, this spiritual growth and intimacy with his heavenly Father. Since a very young age, he was used to helping with the household chores. I want to highlight the participation of kids at home. There's an exaggerated protection nowadays, like avoiding kids to work. I'm talking about Brazil. We have some laws that prohibit kids to work. And he started working in a very at a very young age, and that was not. And nowadays that's not usual. He observed and absorbed everything that the man used to do. He had interest in knowing people. And it's something we should learn with him, because the more we know people, the more we can love these people. Jesus had this fraternal life. He, he wanted to know how people lived. This was so strong that he was always in the place where caravans used to pass by. So he wanted to know more about people. He used to love, he loved to study plants and flowers, and at night he used to study the stars. So since very young, he had this curiosity for everything, especially nature and everything that existed. He started school, but he was already used to read and write Aramaic and Greek. So he had a support from his family. He was homeschooled before going to school. Here I bring to you the encouragement of to encourage our kids to study at home, family education. Jesus liked to talk to travelers that passed by Nazareth, like I said before. I understand this interpersonal as an interpersonal relationship. He wanted to have that. That was important to him. He wanted to know what people used to think, what people felt about their problems, about their lives. Jesus was very interested in people. In Nazareth, he was known, beloved by everyone in the city. There was, in the future, there was some kind of deception by people in the city, but in the beginning, he was like, since a very young age, he was very, very beloved. He stand out of the other kids. People really loved him. He learned how to milk cows, make cheese, and weave. And he used to take care of the animals of the family and to fish. He was proactive. He had interest in everything he did. He was learning in everything he was doing. He dedicated a great part of his time to mathematics. And since at an early age, he had interest for science. At 8 years of age, he started teaching the alphabet to his brother James. Another aspect that I highlighted is the pleasure in sharing, the pleasure of teaching. He taught. He started to teach his brothers and especially sisters, the girls, because girls were not allowed to go to school. But he taught them at home. He started he started to learn how to play the harp around 7, 8 years old, and he developed an exceptional taste for music. He encouraged his friends to study music, to learn music. So Jesus had a big interest in music. Jesus enjoyed strolls and fishing in his uncle's farm. He had great pleasure in being in contact with nature. Every chance he had, he liked to go on these strolls because there he could be in contact with nature and fish. It's a shame that didn't take very long because his father died at a young age. He had delight in drawing landscapes or sites and model objects in clay. So I highlight as interest for art. Uh, Jew, Jewish people had a lot of restrictions concerning arts. There's a commandment that they shouldn't make sculptures or images. So the Jewish people lost a lot concerning art because there was this restriction. But in Nazareth, in specific, it was a little more flexible with this law. Nazareth is a little far from other cities that follow this strict rule. So they permitted some things. So Jesus was friends with people who worked with clay. So he used to go to this place and he spent hours drawing, making drawings and working with clay. It's a shame because he had to destroy everything afterwards because it was something not permitted by the religion. He was given a workbench and tools to work with wood. And he was not even 12. And he had his own workbench. And he did his own work. He was already independent. A little bit ahead, we will see that at 12, he had his own workbench and he made money and he managed his financial life. At 12, he was extremely curious about the physical world and its constitution. Something in Jesus' mind. He was the creator of the universe. But when he was very young, he had this curiosity of how things work. Why the water behaved the way it did, like steamed water, or when once there was snow in Nazareth. He wanted to know why water behaved like that. And many fathers didn't have, and many people didn't have those answers. So he tried to seek how this physical world worked. At 9, he became a leader of a group of 7 boys. Here we can see the gift of leadership in Jesus since a child. And in this group of boys, he created new games and healthy games, and he stimulated them to do so. So here I highlight the gift of leadership. He engaged in conversation with elderly. He was in pursuit of wisdom. He wanted to know new things. And talking to more experienced people, he learned more than with the children at his age. He used to spend a long time with travelers from all over the world, like I mentioned before. Nazareth was many caravans passed by Nazareth. because of commerce, and they transported goods. So it was a point where people from all over the world passed by, and they stopped by because they needed to feed their animals and make some adjustments in their caravans. So Jesus took this opportunity to talk, because he already talked Greek, spoke Greek. So he talked to people from all over the world, distant places. So even not traveling, he knew a lot about the world. He had to be away from school for several weeks to take care of his mother, who had complications in the birth of Jude. He had a sense of altruism extremely elevated. He always put other people on first place. He loved to study, but he gave that up to help his mother. Jesus, since very young, he felt a calling. He felt he had a spiritual mission. Since very young, he felt that. But he also had a sense of obligation with his family, to take care of his family. So he had these two ideas in his mind. So he always thought, I will provide for my family. So to be clear, he took care of his family and also focused on his spiritual mission. He had a great notion of responsibility. Since very young, he was very responsible. He was compassionate and attentive to well-being and happiness of his family. Here we can highlight the kindness and goodness. Jesus was really good. He truly loved his family and his people, the people of his nation. He kept studying music, and he was a flawless harpist. He used to teach his brothers, especially his sisters, who couldn't go to school, like I said before. And at 12, we know the famous story when he was in Jerusalem, a remarkable trip to Jerusalem. In this trip, he learned something about obedience with his parents. He was taken to Jerusalem because he finished his studies. He graduated the regular school, like compared to middle school or high school. So at this age, 12 years old, they are taken to a ceremony, and they are received from a community in Israel as men, as adults. So in this event, he went to Jerusalem to participate to his ceremony. So he went in the caravan with the women. It was common at that time for children that were not adults to travel with their mothers. But when these children became adult, they started to travel with men. So because of that, there was a little confusion because he stayed in Jerusalem because he traveled to Jerusalem with Mary, but he should come back to Joseph because he became an adult there. So Joseph thought, probably he's coming back with Mary. And Mary thought the same thing. Now that Jesus became a man, he's adult in the Jewish eyes, so he's probably coming back with Joseph. But he was neither coming back with the women nor with the men. And he just realized that after one day trip that he had disappeared. And after traveling a whole day, at night, they realized, when the two caravans of women and men met, they realized Jesus was not there. So only the next day, the following day, he traveled back to Jerusalem. So they looked for Jesus everywhere, and they couldn't find. So they found Jesus at the temple talking to the doctors of the law. And Mary was very angry, and she was very stressed because she was looking for Jesus. And she told him off. But Jesus said, Mother, I was doing my Father's will. But Jesus later on understood he was taking care of the affairs of his heavenly Father, and his earthly parents were worried. So, and he was so distracted talking to such important topics that he didn't think about that. But he learned something about obedience. He promised to his parents, I will never do that again. I will never make you feel like this again. I understand that he understood how much their parents suffered all these days, those days. So I highlighted this story, and I think it's important to tell this story because I highlighted the obedience thing. Because he made a promise to his parents to never again to do that again, and to make them so worried. So even when he had something to make in his spiritual mission, he never left his family unattended or without information of where he was going on. In the beginning of his adolescence, this certainty grew that he had a bigger mission. His human mind were starting to get closer to the celestial. So he started to have certainty that there was a call, and he had no doubts anymore. And he had a mission to fulfill. So he organized his mind to know how he would work with these two aspects: his family, to take care of his family on earth, and to fulfill his mission that he was certain, the celestial mission. He liked to participate in events. He used to produce yoke, and he could handle well canvas and leather. He also became a skillful carpenter and woodworker. Something that observed that people and Christians that Jesus was only a carpenter. No, he was not only a carpenter. He was a multi-professional. He started his works as a carpenter, but soon he opened a repair shop, and he started to work also with canvas and leather and wood. He was also a blacksmith. He was translator. He was a caravan conductor. Jesus. Besides that, he was a boat constructor. Besides playing the harp, he was a flawless harpist. Something that Jesus always liked to do were his visits to Mount Tabor. He would make frequent trips to pray and meditate. It was a moment he was in communion with his Father. Before turning 15, he lost his father in a tragic accident. Joseph had a tragic accident. He was a constructor. He was constructing a building, and he fell from the third floor of this building. He worked for Herod. And Jesus, before turning 15, he became the father of the family. At that moment, it was 7 brothers and Ruth that was about to be born. So Jesus had to take care of his mother, 7 brothers, and Ruth. And for Ruth, he was like a father because she never met Joseph. He had a lot of responsibility, and he was not even 15. And he became a father of a huge family. So it was the responsibilities were very heavy, but though that was highly educational, because he faced all human problems and faced all of that with force and fierce in a fierce way. He dedicated his time and energy to 2 purposes: taking care of his family and getting prepared to fulfill his mission on earth. Because basically he had 2 main objectives. I need to take care of my family and provide to my family so I am able to fulfill my celestial mission. Jesus showed to be sharp and to have wit for financial affairs. Jesus was an excellent manager. He fought alone for many years to provide for his brothers and mother and sister. So he had to manage very well his income, and he earned very little. I calculated a quick calculation, and there was a time that Jesus made less than $0.25, or in Brazil, R$1. Nowadays, it means like $0.25, more or less. And he had to take care of his family with that amount of money. So along the time they had to sell their properties and everything they had. Jesus was a liberal, but he was humble. He was frugal, but was generous. So this is the importance of the balance. He was not cheap per se, even in adversity. He demonstrated to be a wise and efficient manager. With little, he could provide for his family. No other father loved the son with such care, affection, and fidelity than him. Jesus was an example. Even not being the biological father, he loved his brothers as sons, like a father. That year, he composed the Lord's Prayer. And I highlight an aspect that I call flexibility. Because Jesus knew that the ideal was that each one made their own prayer with their own words. And he encouraged their siblings to pray from their hearts and what they were feeling at the moment. That they could open themselves to the Heavenly Father truly, and not recite and repeat prayers that were already made. So Jesus saw that his siblings had a lot of difficulty with that. So in that year, he composed the Lord's Prayer. And I classify as flexibility because he perceived the difficulty of his siblings to make their own prayer. So this was a way to encourage them to open up to. So that's why he made the Lord's Prayer, to help them create their own prayers. As he turned 15, he performed his first sermon at the synagogue. The Spirit of God was upon him. For the first time, Jesus was talking to people as a leading speaker. And he read a text that was a prophecy about him. And it was a very emotional moment, and it's a very emotional text. And I highlighted here that Jesus was a spiritual leader, and he always had space at the synagogues to make his sermons. And then the great financial struggle came upon. Jesus never gave up. Apparently, all his plans failed. The future didn't seem promising, but he never hesitated nor got discouraged. He never lost faith. He never lost hope. He always hoped for better days. He worked the whole day to make approximately the equivalent nowadays to $250. Many times he thought about all of them moving to a farm. He thought to do that one day. And he patiently waited the money Herod owed his father. But the king refused to pay, because it was a compensation for the accident that his father suffered working for Herod. So he never got to buy the farm. His work took all his time, so he started to send James to the camel station for gathering information about the happenings in the world. Jesus didn't even have time to get out of the shop for a while, for a little while. But he used to send James to gather information. This strict experience was a safeguard against the possibility of having too much time in his hands for idle thoughts or accept mystical tendencies. The book says Jesus was so occupied that in a certain way it was good because there was no time left for an idle mind. He had just these two thoughts in his mind: to take care of his family and plan his celestial mission. From 15 to 16, the family had a vegetable garden, and each brother had a piece, having a healthy competition among brothers. Jesus sought alternatives. They didn't have much to do. So they got a piece of ground and had a vegetable garden. And each person of the family had a piece. And they made a little competition among the siblings, and it was very healthy. Even with all the struggle, he faced problems in an energetic and intelligent way. He was never weak. They simply adjusted themselves to the reality of the situation and the conditions that were presented to them. And they always faced things with courage. And after the financial crisis, everything they had left were the house they lived in, 3 cows, 4 sheep, chicken breeding, a donkey, and a dog, beside the pigeons and the vegetable garden. Even the young ones had a chore routine in a well-organized schedule. There was a family organization in which all energies were concentrated that the family could survive. And so each one had his or her own obligation. No adolescent youth who has lived or ever will live on this world will or any other world has had or will or ever will have more weighty problems to resolve or more intricate difficulties to entangle. No youngster will ever be called upon to pass through more testing conflicts or more trying situations than Jesus himself endured during those strenuous years from 15 to 20. This year, he attained his full physical growth. He was virile and comely youth. He became increasingly sober and serious, but he was kind and sympathetic. His eye was kind but searching. His smile was always engaging and reassuring. His voice was musical but authoritative. His greeting cordial but unaffected. Always, even in the most commonplace of context, there seemed to be in evidence the touch of a twofold nature, the human and the divine. He was compassionate. He always listened to people. He was a person just to be admired, and he was only 16. At 17, he refused to be part of the Zealot Movement. This event brought him many problems and certain resentment by the population of his city. At that time, there was a movement in all Israel that was they were gathering a movement called Zealot. They wanted to make an army to go against the Roman Empire. So Jesus, he refused to participate in that movement. So when they passed by Nazareth and they were calling young people to participate in this movement, he refused to participate. He didn't want to. And everybody pressured him. Even Mary saw that as an opportunity for Jesus to use his leadership skill. And people really believe that if Jesus were their leader, the situation would be different, because he was an important man, but he had conviction that his mission was not that. It's not a material, earthly mission to participate in an army, go against Rome. Uh, he said, I can't participate in this event because I have a family to take care of. Then, when everything was almost solved, a very rich man said, that's okay. I provide for your family, and all the money your family need, I will help them so you can participate in the movement. And then Jesus didn't understand why he was refusing. A lot of people said that Jesus was being coward because Rome was there was a massacre happening, and so, but they couldn't understand that Jesus was not here for a material, earthly purpose. And Jesus said something: I'm not going because money cannot love. So Jesus said, there's no money in the world that can substitute my presence with my family. So then it started a certain resentment by the people of Nazareth because he refused to participate in the Zealot movement. In the year 12 AD, the family loses Amos, who was 5 years old. There was a lot of struggle, financial struggle, and his father died, and then he loses one of his brothers that was 5 years old. Another hit that he had to overcome. Added to the poverty, funeral expenses came. Although Jesus would only say to his anxious and sad mother, Mother Mary, sorrow will not help us. We are all doing our best, and Mother's smile, perchance, might even inspire us to do better. Day by day, we are strengthened for this test by our hope of better days ahead. So Jesus was always confident. His solid and practical optimism was truly contagious. He was never shaken. Even in the adversity, sometimes he went away to be alone and talked to his Heavenly Father, and came back in a calm way and optimistic. Jesus possessed the ability of effectively to mobilize all his powers of mind, soul, body on the task immediately in hand. He could concentrate his deep thinking mind on the one problem which he wished to solve, and this, in connection with his untiring patience, enable him serenely to endure the trials of a difficult immoral existence. And his methods of child training was always the positive injunctions to do good in the place of the older Jewish method of forbidding to do evil. Because the Jewish people used to say, don't do this, don't do that. And Jesus used to say what they should do. Jesus began wise discipline upon his brothers and sisters at such an early age that little or no punishment was ever required to secure their prompt or wholehearted obedience. The only exception was Jude, upon whom on sundry occasions Jesus found it necessary to impose penalties for his infractions or of the rules of the home. I'm finishing. At 18, he visited the family of Lazarus, and for the first time, he replaced the Paschal lamb to bread and wine. So he break traditions here. Many times we follow some traditional religion, and it's our family traditions and difficult to break, because people say my grandparents, my great grandparents used to do like this, but he showed that it was possible to break some traditions. He was becoming a full-grown man. He learned to bear the responsibility. He already knew how to persevere when deception presented itself. Nothing shook him anymore. He always persevered in adversity. He learned how to be equitable and just, even in the face of injustice. He was learning how to plan an elevated and long fulfillment of idealism, while honestly work to achieve a more immediate purpose for necessity. He was developing his skills to adapt to the trivial demands of human condition. He was slowly learning how to live the celestial life while he still kept his earthly existence. He increasingly embraces his Heavenly Father's direction, while he takes a parental role to guide and direct the children of his earthly family. He took his paternal role, and he always did his father's will. He was becoming experienced and in the skillful wresting of victory from the very jaws of defeat. He's learning how to transform the difficulties of the time into the triumphs of eternity. Sometimes some problems seems like a beast or a lion, and he was learning how to defeat the problems like they were in the mouth of a lion. So this is it. The subject is long, but our time is short. I thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm sorry for the time I exceeded. Thank you very much and a happy Christmas to all of you.